Good evening, everyone. Take your hymnals, turn to hymn 413. Let's sing the first and last verses of Break Thou the Bread of Life. Let's stand as we sing. Thank you, and please be seated. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Glad that you're here. If you ate with us, you enjoyed some wonderful barbecue pork shoulder. And if you ate with me, you probably ate too much, which I did, because I tried to eat what Donald put on my plate. I just didn't want to feel bad, and I can't help it that I happened to be standing there 5 minutes talking with somebody and he just kept putting stuff on. But no, welcome, glad you're here. Still a lot of things going on, and kids graduating, having graduation suppers and get-togethers and parties. And I did something today that was a first for me. I have never done this before. And after tomorrow, I can say with a fairly good deal of confidence that I will never do it again. Well, that's because we're together tomorrow. And so I served as a proctor today for EOG testing at Rogers Elementary for the exceptional children. And that's an experience in and of itself. And I mean, there were 3 children in my room, and one of our teachers had 1 children plus a proctor. I mean, 2 adults and 1 child. I feel sorry for the child taking a test in there, and there's only 3 desks in the room, and then 2 adults walking around all the time. And so, but anyhow, it is quite an experience. And I told them if it hadn't been one of our church members that texted me saying we need to help, I'd have found something to do. But that's where we were this morning. That's where we'll be tomorrow morning. But one of our teachers knew how to look up the schedule and see who the assistant principal had paired together for tomorrow. So I've already found out that I'm going to be with Angie tomorrow. So I didn't know this lady I was with today, but me and Angie will take some food and hide it and stuff or whatever. But I understand these kids getting worried. I understand these kids stressing out. That is the way you have to administer these tests and the instructions you sit there and make them follow. I'd be freaking out too. I mean, that's just, why can't you just hand out a test and say, God bless you, do the best you can, go. No, they have to do all this weirdness. But anyhow, I was not given a book. She cannot show me the book. And my biggest responsibility is to walk by and make sure that the question they're answering in the book, that it's the same one on the answer sheet that they're going to color in the block. Make sure they're staying on schedule. Because if they're up there reading question 39 and they're filling in block 42, Houston, we got a problem. And then I can't fix it. I have to raise my hand and let Angie come over here and figure it out. So it's weird. And I'm like, well, why am I here? And that's just why I'm here. Yeah, make sure they don't cheat. But I mean, make sure you don't cheat. Oh, we can handle that tomorrow. Check payable, BRYANT. Okay. And it's an interesting thing. The education system has changed. That's just the understatement. The amount of paperwork I see administration and teachers and people having to do is just amazing to me. It gave a whole new meaning to what I called homework back when I was in school. Remember that tomorrow night, the Women's Auxiliary meets at 7. And the newsletters are available. In fact, they were available Sunday, and they've already been emailed out. And if you weren't here Sunday, it's sitting on my desk with a stamp on it, and it's going in the mail to you tomorrow. So those are available. The daily breads are available out in the gallery, so please make note of that. Other things are out there in the gallery too, and those are sign-up sheets for a lot of different things that are going on. And this coming Sunday, though, there's a new meeting, and I want to make you aware of it. They've got it up there. I got it written in red down here so I wouldn't forget it. They made me the goat last Sunday by saying there was supposed to be this informative meeting, and the informative meeting is this coming Sunday at 5 in the youth center. This is for middle and high school young men, and the parents are encouraged to come and be there too. They want to see if there's interest and let the kids understand what it would be like to form a junior layman's league. So it's kind of an information sharing and information gathering thing. It would be a young men's group of their own for a devotional type program and ministry. So the Layman's League is sponsoring this and got together with Adam, and they're coordinating this, and I'm just doing the announcing. So that's going to be Sunday afternoon at 5. So remember that if you've got a young man, middle or high school aged. Other prayer requests tonight. If you were here Sunday, you heard Karen talk about this baby. I don't know if a 17-month-old is still considered an infant or not. I guess I doubt it, but it's considered a toddler. But that has suffered a stroke of the spine and is totally paralyzed from the neck down. And she came home Monday. She worked Monday. She came home from work and she said, "We learned today that they're investigating the sitter. They're investigating the child care place where because evidently there's come back some bruising and stuff in places that there shouldn't be, and so on." So what'd she tell you this morning? I wasn't here. Well, that makes me feel better from the standpoint that it wasn't a human being that abused the child. Moved to Boston. So that family's getting ready to go through an awful lot. And we don't know the family. It's just carrying through work, and so remember it. That's going to be. But I remember something that when Caleb was a little infant, he got that hot. He couldn't walk. It was by his growth plate on his leg, and he just couldn't even walk. And I forget what it was called, but it was frightening to us because it just. And Dr. May, who's one of the best pediatricians around, was working with some Duke doctors trying to sharing information and showing them the results of tests. And come to find out, they knew what it was, but they didn't know how to treat it. And come to find out, some cough medicine that was 50 years old, that had been around forever, was what Duke had some case experience that it was great for it. And in 24 hours, so we had the orthopedics that were mad as fire because they wanted to go in and do bone testing and all of this kind of stuff. And he was upset, and Dr. Mason, he's going to have this cough medicine first. And they gave the youngin the medicine, and in 24 hours, he came home from the hospital. He was just walking around fine. It was amazing. Sometimes stuff that's been around forever is still a very good medicine. How long has aspirin been around? But it's just that you wouldn't think that something like that would be medicinally beneficial to an infant. It was an adult cough medicine that had been around forever. So I don't remember what it was. I don't care. All I know is Caleb got well and went home the next day. So other people that we want to remember. I know a couple of our members have some tests coming up. I have not talked with Curtis today about how his dad is. Yeah, that's. I was wondering. I had his text and sharing with the board and of what he said, and I didn't know if anything had changed from that or not. But if it is, it would be a big relief. Okay. I couldn't go see him this morning. Right. Yeah, that was that. Some big long word with the neuropsychotherapy, I forget, but anyway, that was supposed to be this afternoon. Curtis's daddy has really been working on Curtis, and he didn't want prayers just for his daddy. He wanted prayers for him too. Am I going out, or are y'all playing up there? Okay, as long as somebody can hear. Anyone else? Okay. 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 I sat right there and talked some with Debbie during supper, but didn't ask about her granddaddy to know how he was doing. Julia Harrison's dad, and I have not got an update on him. I will update you on Buddy Sasser. He's got one more treatment, and he's doing very well. He's done well. He's played a little golf, and I asked him, did chemo help his golf game? He said no. And so, but he's kept his strength pretty well and is doing okay. And my other friend that I had on the prayer list, but I took him off, Jimmy Webster. Another minister friend, Jimmy, is a generation above me. He's about 78, and he's having to learn to cope with carrying the oxygen tank, portable oxygen tank with him. And he was at the convention Wednesday, but he had that But I got to learn to get around with it, and that's all there is to it. I can either accept it or I can walk around struggling to breathe. So, which do you want to do? So he's for his age, his health, his issues, and everything else, he's doing pretty as good as can be expected. So, okay. Anyone else? Let's bow together. Father, for this day and the opportunity that we've had to be a part in it and share in it and hopefully be a blessing to someone else, or at least an example for someone, we thank you. We thank you for life's blessings. We thank you for your goodness to us. We thank you for the privilege of prayer. It's such a privilege because it can be so personal. It can be so individual. We can pray for ourselves. We can look to you with our own private and individual needs. And we can share them with you. And we know that you hear. We know that you understand our feelings, our conditions, our wants and our needs. And that through and by our faith, you respond in accordance with your will to our personal requests, our private needs, whether they be praise items or items of concern. And you hear our prayers for others. And even when we don't understand what they're going through and all the journey that they may have ahead of them, we understand that no one is out of your love and out of your care. Even if we do walk outside of your will for our lives, you never let us walk alone. And we thank you for that ever-abiding presence. We thank you that you can minister to us, you can minister and you can offer healing. You can offer healing of the soul. You can offer healing and peace of mind. You can offer healing in a physical aspect also. Help us to understand that all the goodness that is a part of our living comes from your love for us. Bless us now as we as a church continue to move forward in this community, seeking to expose you for who you are, a God of love and mercy and forgiveness that makes our lives complete as nothing else can. And bless us as we study together tonight for these few moments. In Christ we pray. Amen. Okay. Yeah, the fire. That was mentioned Sunday. And we were able to get some things together from our room. And Kelly took the lead role in that and getting things together. But yes, thank you for mentioning it. I do not know an update on how they're doing. They have somewhere to stay and all of that, and we've learned that, but we learned of some of their needs, and we had some of those items in the room that were gotten to them. Well, I've never lost everything that I've got. So I don't know what it's like to be walking around with nothing but clothes on your back and wondering what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't know, and I can't fathom that. I've been a part of it when we were in Cove City and Hurricane Floyd. We had some people that lived down off the road. And when we could get within sight of it, and all you could see of that house was the roof. And I had a church family. That was one of my church family's homes. And everything they ever had was in that house. And, I've tried to console and minister to a few church members over my career that have experienced losing everything and starting over. And sometimes you feel like it's kind of a shallow or an empty thing when you say, go, here's this motel room. We've got it. The church has got it covered. Just go stay. You don't have to burden family or feel like you're burdening your brother or your sister or whatnot. Go stay. We've got you a couple of rooms for the next couple of weeks. And you say, well, at least they've got somewhere dry, clean, safe to be, even if they don't know what to do. But I can't fathom, Good gracious. That's amazing, because I was one of those fire truck chasers that day, and I followed them to the fire and parked over in the other yard, and was just, I mean, you couldn't even see the house. There was just so much smoke billowing out from under the eaves, and it was rolling. I really don't know how they saved anything. That's amazing. Okay. I've been talking about, between Mother's and Father's Day, God's guidance, His gift of the home, His gift of the family, talking about how we can minister for Him, how we can be a witness for Him. And I want to bring it to a close tonight by simply using the passage in the 7th chapter of Matthew. Just 4 verses of Scripture. And just use the theme. For the home, Jesus' teaching is all you need. It really is. People say you might need firm financial backing, you need this, you need that, you need an understanding of this and that and the other, because it's just having a home, running a home, and doing all of these things can be overwhelming at times. And I'm one of those parents right now that is experiencing, watching my son look around like, what now? Yeah, they're newlyweds. They're trying to set up a home. I said, man, I would just sit here and be excited, because I had an 8-foot wide by 45 mobile home that I started out in when I first got married, and felt like I was in a tinderbox. And you've got a nice home that you're going to get a chance. I said, I would just be tickled. He said, I am, but I don't know what to do. Where do you start? What's next? Who do you talk to? And so it's fun to watch, and then you try to be helpful. So what he needs to understand is that he's got a marvelous gift, just like all of us do, the gift of our health, our strength, our education, our intellect, that has allowed us to have what we do have today. Well, the bottom line of it is that if it's going to be the way God truly intended for it, then we need to be making sense of what Jesus' words tell us, if we're going to have the truly right kind of home. He said, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the wind blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rains came, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. It's interesting that we are talking about losing everything. That's a pretty easy description to visualize that Jesus gives us. To compare someone who obeys his teaching to someone that builds on a rock, on a firm, on a secure foundation, versus someone who doesn't. The metaphor was meant to represent all of a person's life, but it can also be used literally in building a Christian home. A Christian home cannot be built on, well, if it's not too bad, if the wind's not blowing too bad, and if it's not too cold, and if we don't sleep in, we'll go to church. Or, well, I really don't feel good, and if I'm going to be able to go to work Monday, I better stay in today and take care of myself. That one has always amazed me. I'm sorry, but it does. We can drag ourselves to work and sling snot all over the workplace. Excuse me, Lisa, I know that you're a drunk, but, and just, and we'll wash our hands a million times, but I'm wondering, maybe we discussed this in a recent board meeting. We're going to put some of those Purell things at the door, so maybe you'll feel better about coming to church. So as soon as you walk in the door, you can get you a couple of squirts on your hand. And if you look dirty, I'll get a squirt and put it on your face or whatever. And maybe that'll help our attendance and people will come. Evidently we think that solves, but trust me, it solves an awful lot of problems. Because Think of how many things you touch during the course of a day that aren't yours. Someone else's door, someone else's mail, so, you know. Jesus said a Christian home should be, by its very nature, a home that is built upon the things that he has taught us. If I would ask you to list 4 or 5 things as one-word statements that you think would be foundational to your home, what would you say? Building a home upon a rock, the rock of his teaching. I would think that integrity would be a word I would come up with. I would think maybe honesty. I would think character. And all of those are good. And we can come up with a few more. But unless you include the word salvation in there, none of those other things are going to matter in your personal life. Now, you may have good ethics and character and morals and things like that and be appreciated in the business world and move up the business ladder. But that business ladder that you're moving up is not going to get you one step closer to heaven. That's the wrong ladder. So, his teachings are foundational. How do you teach? How do you tell a child that it's important to tell the truth? Why? Because we say, what? If you tell a lie, that's what? Wrong. Well, how do you know what's wrong? How do you know what's right? Who made that distinction? You trace it back as far as you want to, and you're tracing it back to Scripture. You're tracing it back to the church, and it was the church that has taught. It wasn't the school system. They told you that 9 plus 4 was 13. And if you put 12, you were wrong, and if you put 14, you were wrong. But that's a number thing. That's concrete. That's stuff black and white. But the concept of truth, the concept of honesty, where does it go back to? Does it go back to your first grade teacher? I don't think so. It may go back to your primary Sunday school teacher, or your pastor, or a mom and dad that were raised in the church that taught you the right and wrong. My Uncle Clyde told me something one day, and I guess I've been here long enough that if I've talked about my Uncle Clyde a few times. And he was a quiet man who was a tenant farmer. He didn't own a thimble full of dirt that he could call his own except the lot that his house was on. And that he bought, good gracious, when I was out of high school. But he taught that He taught me so many things just by the way he lived and the way he carried himself. And we would walk into A.W. Ainge there in Winterville, and that would be where he got his money, because he farmed Miss Fannie Mae's, a lot of her farms there. And she would, put up front the money for each week to pay off the hands and so on. And he'd be in there, and there'd be some guys in there talking just as rough and, 4-letter words every 3 or 4 words. And me and Jerry and Jimmy would be in there with him, and he'd say, come on, we're going across to the Amico station over there. Was Uncle E.C.'s Amico station. So we're going over there and get a drink. Well, we didn't have time to go over there and get a drink. But Uncle Clyde wouldn't make a scene, and he wouldn't say, excuse me, you've got no business talking like that in front of these young boys. He would leave. But he would get us away from that atmosphere. And you didn't cuss over there in Uncle E.C.'s station, or he'd put you some lead-free Amico down your throat. He would give you one shot at cleaning it up. And so, but he taught me, he says, it don't matter how much money you've got. What matters is how much character people see in you. And I would rather them see me being honest than walking around talking like that, trying to flout all I have. or think I have. And so I learned early on the importance of integrity. And it had nothing to do with social standing. It had everything to do with the fact that Jesus said, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Honor your father and mother. Don't steal, don't kill, don't murder. Don't envy. Don't covet. The basics of honesty, the basics of character, they don't come from some famous writer. They come divine. And those things set up the home. And Uncle Clyde gave me the lesson that, these people, man, they'd be in church on Sunday and people fought all around them because they were just somebody. But I got confused as to what person they were, because they all dressed up, cleaned up, and walking around looking proud on Sunday at church. And yet I see them in A.W. Ainge on Monday, and I'm wondering, who are you? That's one thing I never had to wonder about my Uncle Clyde. Because he's the same way on Sunday, he was the same way on Tuesday, whether he was out in the tobacco patch. And you people that farm, you know how important a watermelon patch is. And I'm sure you know how much trouble one will get in if the person driving the tractor with a truckload of tobacco behind it didn't know what a watermelon patch looked like and proceeded to drive towards the barn through the watermelon patch. Most of you would have heart failure and then be in prison for murder because you're going to kill the person on that tractor for running over, because I saw watermelons going everywhere. But then I didn't know what to do. I just figured I'd hurry up and get on out of here. It was to Uncle Clyde and Uncle Leo. Uncle Leo went over and said, stop. He just stopped me. And then he proceeded to go and stomp down about 20 hills of tobacco. That tobacco didn't mean squat to him, but them watermelons were valuable. Drive over here. But did they blow their gasket? Did I get cursed out? Did I see a different? No, I saw them upset, but I saw them level-headed. I never saw my uncle explode at anybody. I never saw that temper come out at anyone. Those things come from the home. They come from the practical teachings of the home. And Jesus, and I'm going to go over just a couple more things. Jesus said to build this up and to expand what he was teaching. He said in Luke 6:38, give, and it shall be given to you. This is difficult, and you'll hear it taught a lot of different ways. And I want to be very careful and not sound like I'm a proponent or a believer in the health and wealth gospel, because I'm not. I don't believe in that. But Jesus, I think, tries to help us to understand that ultimately what we receive will be determined by what we give. Not what we turn in, but what we willingly, lovingly, and devotionally give. And that's true in life. And you see, I'm trying to move quickly, because the first times, every time somebody hears something about giving in the church, you just think about money. It's the first thing that comes to our mind, right? It is. This is what I'm talking about, and this is what I think Jesus was talking about. Have you ever seen a friendly person that didn't have a lot of friends? I mean, have you? Friendly people, people who are friendly in nature and kindly in heart, they tend to have more friends. Loving people have people that love them back. Not because they're, but because they're loving people. Whatever we hope to receive from our spouse, we ought to first be committed to giving it before we are expecting to receive it. Do you want to be respected? Then be respectful. Do you want to be loved? Then shower your mate and your children and your parents with love. If a man is cold to his wife, this isn't my line, but it's easy when anybody could have done it. If a man is cold to his wife, she's going to be cold to him. Another great teaching that we struggle with, and especially in teaching it in the home, Matthew 18:21 and 22. Talk about this thing of forgiveness. And the disciple asked, how many times should I forgive? Did I forgive 7 times? And what was his response? Don't just forgive 7 times. Forgive 70 times 7. In spite of all of our romantic ideals for marriage, we should never get over the fact or move beyond the reality that a marriage, first and foremost, is the putting together of 2 sinners under the same roof. I've tried to make that point. This has been fun for me to do this series on the heels of my son getting married because so much of this stuff I'm studying, I'm seeing, and it's kind of cool. But, Bill Gaither wrote a beautiful song entitled Sinners Saved by Grace. And he's exactly right. We are sinners. And only by the grace of God do we have the privilege of an assurance of a home in heaven. And so how dare we think, and maybe some of you grandmas and grandpas need to instill this to some of these millennials around here, that you're still a sinner. There ain't nobody under your roof perfect. I had my feelings hurt yesterday by my wife. See, one of the things, she made an executive decision a few days ago and said that I don't like your bucket list. And I don't think you're holding to your own bucket, so I'm going to make you a bucket list. And let you know the priorities that I'm concerned with. So I decided, number one, I already knew what the top 3 were. I already knew that. And one of the things on her bucket list was she bought this pretty picture. She thinks it's beautiful. She said, that'll go in that dining room just great, right where that current picture is. It was take one down, put one back up. But the hinges, the Duma thingies that you hang with wouldn't work. And they were upside down on the frame. They were put on the back of the picture wrong. And so she couldn't hang it, which, number one, didn't make her day. And so it's been in the closet now for a number of weeks because I had not gotten around to it yet. So I knew what was on the top of her list. So what did I do day before yesterday with Granny? I said, get out here, and here I am, and I fixed a set of hangers on that thing, and then proceeded to go outside. I didn't eyeball this thing, Phil. I went and got my 4-foot spirit level and my tape measure because this picture was a different size than the other one, so it couldn't go just right like that on that nail. So, of course, we had to put others up. And I had my spirit level, had this thing out, and the first time we set it down, Granny backed up and said, that's perfect. Walked away. Do you think my wife saw that picture when she got home from work? When she sat at that table, less than 4 feet away from the wall? No. Later that afternoon, I proceeded to do number 2 on the list, which was to sand those 7 or 8 places in my house where Sadie the Wonder Shepherd decided that she could eat wood, which was on the bottom of that bookcase that had been built, and on a couple of doors, and on some corner moldings. And so what did I do after I hung the picture? I went out to my barn, I come back with my orbital sander, and here I went. And got them sanded nice and smooth. Went out there, got my bucket of of white semi-gloss and my little 1-inch paintbrush, and here I went. That was Monday afternoon. Has she seen it yet? No. She finally saw the picture last night. Granny and I were sitting at the table dropping every kind of hint known to man. The picture is behind my head. If you look at me, you're going to see the picture. And then finally, 3/4 of the way through supper, she went, "My God, you hung my picture." Am I telling it wrong? Now, Monday, my feelings were hurt. I was doing the top 2 things, and she still ain't seen number 2. And if you text her, I'm going to whoop you. You've probably already done it at this point. And I'm like, she slid the dog bed over so it would hide where the dog had chewed. So, of course, what did I do? I slid the dog bed way back out of the way so that if you just look, there's this nice shiny white corner. If anybody texts her, I'm going to whoop you. Because she's not seen them yet. That's okay. She saw the third thing I was trying to do, but I got a miter saw and all that stuff I got from my sister, but I still can't quite do it in my head and get which way the 45s are supposed to. I got to recut some molding because the 45s are all messed up. But then she looks in there, "Oh, you're fixing this." And that still didn't even whoop her mind to look at the paint or look at the picture. But she saw me out there trying to work in the foyer and put down 10 feet of molding that for some reason hasn't been down for a year and a half. But I'm getting to it. But I forgive her. Because there's been many times that I've let her down. And there's been precious few that she ever let me down. And most of the time, if we'd make light of them, like we had fun with that picture at supper last night, you know, life would be a lot better in everybody's home. Sometimes we like to divide what forgiveness means. How many of you have ever said, "Oh, I'll forgive them, but I'll never forget it"? Be honest. How many times have you said that? Go ahead and smile. Let God love you because you know you have. "Oh, I'll forgive it, but I'll never forget it. I'm going to learn my lesson." Let me tell you something. You go right on forgiving, and you go right on holding it, and you're going to bust hell wide open. Because it's plain. Forgetfulness goes along with forgiveness. That's biblical. You cannot separate the two. That's like coming to the altar. And you people bug me over 38 years of ministry, people in 4 churches now, they're in every church. I even laid the chairman of my deacon board to rest when he took his own life because he just could not come to an altar and leave his burdens with the Lord and walk away and leave them there. I'm like, why did you come if you're going to turn right around and carry your baggage right back to the pew with you? You come wanting God to do something, and then you don't let him do it. And I give it, I grant it. Sometimes it's hard to leave it here. I grant that. I know there's been more than once I've walked away and felt like I was still carrying back what I brought. But that's nothing but a weakness of faith. That's all that is. We're scared and afraid to keep our faith and our trust in God. I've told this story before, and I hope you'll remember it, and I'm closing with it. The district attorney down in Wilmington gave my family the chance to face the person that took my son and threw him in the woods when he was found dead in his apartment. They freaked out, and they went and they threw him in the back of the Carolina State Park down there. And it was 9 days before anybody found him. And, of course, cremation was mandatory. There was no choice. And later, 3 months later, when the guy was caught out in Nevada, because he split the scene and brought back and extradited, and he wasn't even going to pull any time. He was going to get probation because it was a Class E felony, just moving a dead body when you shouldn't. I went second. I let his mother go first, and she stood there and wouldn't even look at him. Told the judge she couldn't bring herself to look at this person that had done these things to his body. And as the Lord would have it, the day we were supposed to be in court down there was the day that I was supposed to leave for Pastor Deacon, and Irvin was going with me to Pastor Deacon, so he decided that he would go to Wilmington with us so that I wouldn't have to go by myself and we could just hit 40 and go on to Cragmont. So he was there, and he heard Josh's mother do her thing. And so I do have a witness. I stood there and I looked at the judge and I told him who I was and what I'd done. And I told him, I said, in my career I've done over 100 funerals. Some easier than others. But over my 30 plus years, one of the things that I have known and have seen happen is the peace and the closure a family can get when they can have that last private time in that family room with that casket and that loved one. I've seen it be able for them, not that it makes life easier, but it gives them a closure. It gives them a sense of parting. It gives them a sense of being able to say goodbye. And I looked at the judge and I said, I traveled 2.5 hours down here, but I didn't travel to talk to you. And I turned to that guy. And he was about 3.5 feet away from me, I guess, 4 feet. And I told him, I said, you took something that could have been very meaningful away from my family, from my 2 sons. They never had a chance to say anything or have any kind of closure. All they've got is whatever kind of picture they can paint of their brother. You took that away from me. The opportunity that I had to maybe have helped them. You took all of that away from me and away from my sons and my family. And I said, I forgive you. And the judge popped his head up like one of them do thingies at the fair. It got his attention real quick. I noticed it in the side. And I said, I forgive you. And that I hope that the Lord will burden you with this in a dream every night you have until you find salvation, because you are a sick man and the only thing that can help you is the loving care of God. And then I turned around and I walked out of that courtroom, and Irvin had a hard time keeping up with me getting to my car. I was ready to get out of town. I can attest to the fact that sometimes it's hard to forgive. It is. It is hard to forgive. And in spite of all of our romantic ideals that we have about life and so on, if we don't seek first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, forget about all that stuff that you think is being added to you because it's worthless. Okay? I want to conclude with the great Baptist preacher R.G. Lee. In his book, he wrote, he said, when I proposed to my wife, he said, quote, "Lady, I would love for you to have second place in my life for the rest of my life." He said, "You better explain that to me." And he replied, he said, "A number of years ago, I gave Jesus first place, but I'd be honored if you'd serve as second." And she accepted, and she said, "Well, if it's Jesus that has first place, then I know you'll be the husband you ought to be and the father to our children that Jesus will be proud of." The right foundation means everything. especially in the home. Thank you for coming. Let's stand and be dismissed. Paul, would you dismiss us?